Welcome villagers, to the village hidden in the stories. I am your guide, all KAGE, and I hope you like the video we have today. Please comment video ideas, and subscribe if you're new. Before we begin I must say sorry, I mistakenly didn't put shoutouts up last time, so I'm doing it today, and I hope you like What If Naruto Was Sent to Transformers. I worked very hard on it, and part 2 will come out tomorrow. Without further ado, let's get into this amazing what if. Part 1, More Than Meets the Eye. A faint glow of sunlight spilled through the open curtains of a slightly unkempt room, its golden light stretching across the floor as the day grew longer. The floor was spotless, but the unmade bed told a different story, its blanket wrinkled and tangled near the edge as if hastily thrown aside. In the far corner, a laundry hamper brimmed with mismatched shirts, jeans, and hoodies layered chaos that seemed to reflect its owner's energy. Beside it, a black guitar leaned against the wall, its surface plastered with stickers from unknown bands and half-faded logos. The dresser, possibly the messiest part of the room, was a testament to scattered priorities. A kunai pouch sat among a watch, loose change, and a well-worn baseball cap, all piled haphazardly as if waiting for someone to sort them or abandon them entirely. Thrown on the other side of the room, in its smallest area, was a small damaged desk, scratches and dents set in its wooden surface. Some of these buffs looked like they could have been done by a weapon, which was much easier to tell when you saw the kunai sticking out from the side of the desk. Aside from the small hazard of the kunai, a laptop lay on the desk, open but turned off, forgotten in some way as it sat there, keys cold for who knows how long. The silence around the room was almost clear, faint snoring from the room's tenant. And the hums of the air conditioning were the only things that interrupted the quiet, and it would have been kept as such, if it wasn't for the sudden beeping of an alarm clock near the side of the bed. Red lights blared as much as they could in the day, accenting its annoying sound that repeated over and over. The sound was loud, obnoxious, but frankly, wasn't anywhere close to waking up the boy who slept peacefully on the bed. His arms and legs laid spread out as he laid on his back, his spiky yellowish blonde hair covered his eyes from sight, and his whisker-like birthmarks gave a sense of danger and wildness to his unconscious demeanor. The alarm seemed to be getting louder with each second. But even as it did so, his snoring hadn't stopped a bit. Eventually, after a few minutes of the obnoxious alarm, rustling sounds emerged from the bed, but it wasn't the blonde boy stirring. Beneath the tangled blanket covering his leg, something shifted. The movement was subtle at first, forming an ominous shape as it squirmed, searching for a way out. The motions grew faster as the alarm continued its relentless blare, erratic and almost inhuman, as if whatever was trapped beneath the blanket had reached its limit. Finally, the blanket puffed upward, floating momentarily as the unseen force beneath grew more agitated. In one swift motion, it launched itself toward the offending alarm clock. A red flash lit the room as the clock was obliterated, crushed in a way that defied logic. Yet, faintly, its stubborn beeping persisted, a mocking echo in the now still room. The flattened piece of tech lay on the bedside table, and atop it, the source of destruction lingered, a hand of bubbling red energy. The translucent appendage pulsed and popped, its surface boiling as it flexed one last time, attempting to crush the clock further. When that failed, it began to recede, retreating back toward the boy still snoring peacefully on the bed. But one beep from the barely working alarm managed to set the appendage off again. It launched itself once more out of obvious anger. Another flash of red was produced. Not as bright as the first one. As the arm rushed and flailed, boiling energy popped even more, and the hand attached to the arm grew outstretched and monsterish, before slamming directly into the bed stand, completely destroying the whole thing altogether, with one blow. Just like its first attack, it sat there for a few seconds, waiting for a sound, whether it was the slight snore the boy had, or the hum of the room, or the now even more destroyed alarm, was unknown as it sat and waited. And as if finally satisfied, it began to retreat into the blonde, only now it fully disappeared and completely disformed as the boy still snored. Ironically, the possible efforts to keep the boy in bed were for nothing. As the voice of a woman yelled out, finally waking the blonde, "Naruto," the voice screamed, yelling out for the blonde that jolted up with an uneasy breath. "Yes," Naruto asked a few seconds later with a yell, questioning why he was awoken all of a sudden. As he tried to steady his breath, it took a few seconds for the womanly voice to respond again, almost sounding old and tired when it finally yelled back, "You're running late. Remember, you have that project due today. If you want your father to get you that car, you're gonna need that last A." The boy's eyes widened, as he moved his hair out of the way, showing his blue eyes before giving a small groan, having realized he overslept. "Damn it," he said quietly, but it was sharp before he started to rub the tiredness out of his eyes. His hand then moved to the blanket covering his leg, throwing it off with a quick pull. The blonde boy practically jumped from his bed, feeling his feet on the soft carpet before rushing to his dresser. "Mom," he yelled as he placed his hand on the smooth surface, holding himself up while opening a drawer. "Yes," a yell came back questioningly, and as Naruto moved, he waited a few more seconds before answering. Grabbing a shirt and some pants from his dresser, he began to put the clothes on, pulling down his black shirt before quickly shifting around, as if searching for something with a quick flick of his head. He eventually stopped moving, staring at the destroyed bedside table, along with his flattened alarm clock. Naruto's eyes had widened, his mouth left open as he stared agape at the destruction in his room, something he was sure shouldn't have happened, but instead of questioning it, he took it in without a worry. This answered the question of why he wasn't woken up earlier, but it had put up other questions for what had happened while he was asleep, making him wonder slightly before deciding to yell to his mother again. "I need a new clock," he yelled once more, keeping a close eye on his destroyed table. Again, he continued, a bit more embarrassed as he did so. It didn't take long for an answer. Their back and forth getting faster the longer Naruto stayed awake. "Really?" the woman's voice questioned in a confused tone. "This is the third time this week. We might need to start stocking up on clocks." Naruto gave a sigh at this. He rubbed his whiskers as he remembered what happened to his other alarms. Similar acts of destruction had happened to all of them, and each one had been worse than the last. What he was staring at right now was possibly the worst one he had seen so far, and he didn't know how long this would keep up, but at this point he hadn't found an answer. He only figured that it would keep happening until he did something about it, and right now he was more worried about getting to school, not about his destroyed clock. Naruto finally dismissed the destruction, moving towards his clothes hamper with one turn. With a few quick strides he walked towards the hamper. He then let his hand dive in the soft pile of clothes, feeling around for something as he reached in. The soft cloth on his hand was made by multiple high-quality jackets and hoodies, each one having been a reward the boy bought for himself with the jobs he took. And after a few seconds of searching, he was able to pull out an orange hoodie, with an intact black design going from neck of it, all the way through the rest of the jacket, the main part having 3 kamas in a circle, and multiple small kanji branching from it. The whiskered blonde then grabbed his backpack, and moved to the hallway connected to his room. He quickly skipped the stairs, riding down the rail and landing on the wooden floor. A loud thud could be heard as he braced himself a bit, but quickly he looked to the door ready to run out of his house. "Mom, I'm heading out," Naruto called, slipping on his shoes and bolting for the door, but just as his hand reached the doorknob, he paused. His gaze shifted to a nearby table, where a picture sat surrounded by a small bouquet of flowers. The blonde boy's lips curled into a soft smile as he stepped closer. The photo showed a boy about 12 years old, with jet black hair and warm brown eyes, a stark contrast to Naruto's golden blonde and striking blue. Naruto stood there for a moment, looking at the picture with quiet reverence. The photo was more than a keepsake, it was a reminder of the family he'd gained and the brother he'd lost. Naruto hadn't been born into this house. He'd spent his earliest years as an orphan, with no home to call his own. He didn't know what had happened to his biological family, but the Witwikis had taken him in and treated him like one of their own. But a few years later, tragedy struck. His adoptive brother, Sam Witwicky, was taken from them. Naruto never got a clear answer about what had happened. He'd pried, pleaded, and demanded the truth, but the answers always came in pieces, fragmented, evasive. He never stopped wishing for closure, or at least one last goodbye. Still, he found solace in this photo. "Morning, Sam," Naruto said softly, his voice tinged with bittersweet nostalgia. He let his memories linger for a moment before turning back toward the door. Just as he stepped outside, his mother's faint voice reached him. "Have a good day," she called from deeper inside the house. Naruto grinned as he closed the door behind him, setting off toward school. Naruto's feet hit the pavement in a steady rhythm. Running felt natural, almost effortless, like his legs were designed to propel him faster than anyone else. He never questioned why, he was different in ways he couldn't quite explain. But his speed came with a downside. Coaches and teachers were relentless about recruiting him for the track team. No matter how many times he turned them down, they kept coming back, undeterred. He reached the school quickly, weaving through the bustling halls until he arrived at his classroom. Now, Naruto stood at the front of the class, arms crossed and a mock frown on his face as he stared at the chaos before him. The room was a cacophony of laughter and chatter. Students were engrossed in their own conversations, completely ignoring the blonde standing by the teacher's desk. Naruto glanced back at his teacher, who sat quietly at their desk, apparently unbothered by the noise. He offered no help, leaving him to face the rowdy class alone. The blonde sighed, his frown deepening. This was supposed to be his time to present, but it didn't seem like anyone cared enough to listen. But he knew there was no point in just sitting here. If he wanted that, he would have to do this presentation, no matter how many people annoyed him. He only hoped that it wouldn't take too long for him to get their attention. A class as loud as this one was probably going to stay like this unless told otherwise. And possibly, even when told off, they would continue on this path. Not taking any longer to think on his actions, Naruto cleared his throat. The sudden sound somehow interrupted every conversation in the room. It had even caused the teacher to look up, as if he realized he still had a class to teach. "Sorry, Mr. Witwicky, I forgot that you're up." Laughs went through the air at the teacher's words, and at some point, a spitball had made contact with his jacket. It soared through the air like a small bullet, propelled by wind before hitting his jacket with a small smack. Naruto pulled his jacket to look at the disgusting attack, before letting it down and looking forward blankly. The blonde didn't say anything, already wanting this project to be over as he moved up his backpack. Naruto sighed inwardly as the laughter settled. This wasn't going the way he'd hoped, but he wasn't about to let one spitball and some laughter derail him. Reaching into his bag again, he began unpacking his project materials: a rolled-up piece of paper, an old pair of glasses, and a few metal artifacts. "For my family project," he started again, keeping his tone calm despite the lingering chuckles. But just as he was about to continue, another spitball came flying through the air. This time, Naruto caught it mid-flight without missing a beat. He stared at the small, soggy wad for a moment before dropping it onto the desk with a soft thud. Lifting his head, he scanned the back row with a sly smile. "Wow," he said, loud enough for the entire class to hear. "Whoever's still doing spitballs must think it's second grade. I mean, really? That's the best you've got?" The room erupted in laughter again, this time directed toward the guilty party. Naruto didn't point fingers, he didn't need to. A few knowing glances in the back row did the work for him. Satisfied, he turned back to his presentation, his grin fading into a more focused expression. "I'll deal with them later," he thought, already forming plans for a harmless yet unforgettable prank. For now, though, he had a project to finish. Once the class quieted down, Naruto moved directly into his project. Holding up one of his papers which had a picture of an older man on it, the paper was old and wrinkled, with cuts in its sides, as well as words that were unreadable. It was tinted yellow, and while no one noticed, it held a faint stink, along with picture older man. The paper held other people on it, but the most important being the one in the middle. I've decided to do my project on my great-great-grandfather, who was a famous man, Captain Archibald Witwicky, the boy said the proud look, holding up his grandfather's picture with a smile. However, only bored stares outlined the class as the blonde spoke, no one being slightly interested in the topic. He was a very famous explorer. In fact, he was one of the first to explore the Arctic Circle, which was a big deal, he said while turning the paper around, stressing its importance while showing a small diagram of the Arctic. In 1897, he took 41 brave sailors straight into the Arctic shelf. Naruto gave a smile before shifting the paper once more, showing a picture of what was assumed to be his grandfather's boat. His motto, as well as our family motto, the boy started in slight wonder, questioning what he was about to say just a bit. It was, "No sacrifice, no victory," he said mockingly, though the words resonated with him much more than he wanted to admit, which was used about as much as you expected it to be used. Naruto said jokingly, before putting the paper down and grabbing hold of one of the metal objects. The whiskered blonde began to shuffle the metal in his hands, showing off the different artifacts he had brought in for his talk. And here, we have some of the basic instruments and tools used by 19th century seamen, said Naruto, after which the class erupted laughter. This was accented by the teacher pulling up a stop sign, getting his students to quickly calm down for the first time today. After the quick jolt of activity in his class, Naruto moved on, putting down one object with a small click as it fell on the teacher's desk. He then held up another object with both his hands. For all the class to see, this here is the quadrant. It wasn't really stated what it does, but I know it must have been important if Gramps left it for our family, Naruto said with a proud expression. The blonde then gestured to all the other objects on the desk, different shapes that shifted and turned. The only normal thing seemed to be the pair of cracked glasses that he quickly grabbed next, much to the boredom of his class. The glasses were circular, like glasses you would see on certain stereotypical Santa Claus statues. The glasses were cracked in a pattern, each intricate line only showing on the bottom of the lenses, and as the whiskered boy looked to them, they seemed to make him think on something. Having another proud look, these are his glasses, he wore on his trips. Now, I don't know if other seamen had these. Another quick jolt of laughter woke the students up before Naruto continued, but these ones were his, and I have liked for other pairs, if only to get the lenses replaced because no one else I have gone to had any of this size, so please tell me if. Naruto was swiftly interrupted by a bored sigh from the teacher, which was unexpected to the boy as one of his eyebrows rose. The blonde looked back to the teacher, the man being laid back and looking out the window, before having turned to Naruto with a look that matched his tone. Come on, Mr. Witwicky, get on with it. I know this stuff is important, but we have to get on since you arrived late. Normally the words would hurt anyone, but Naruto just ignored them because it seemed as if he should just move on with the story. This further cemented one of his teachers as an idiot in his eyes, and possibly someone who shouldn't have a teaching license after putting down a student, even though he wasn't put down in any way. Naruto let out a quick annoyed sigh, ignoring and dismissing his teacher's words before pulling out one last paper. It had another picture of his grandfather on it, along with some strange symbols that outlined and I capture his picture. Unfortunately, my great-great-grandfather, the genius that he was, wound up going blind and crazy in a psycho ward. The blonde boy gestured then to the paper before continuing, focusing on the symbols that were on it. He also began drawing these strange symbols, and babbling on about some giant ice man that he thought he discovered. Naruto tried to give a small chuckle, but he was taken over by the loud siren of the bell. It rung loudly and quickly, announcing the end of the class. Students lost interest in the blonde boy, not like they had held any interest in the first place anyway. Instead, the quickly and crowdedly filtered out, not listening to the words of their teacher as they tried to get to their next class. This made the teacher of the class, the little help that he was, try and call out for his students, getting no answer from them. Might be a pop quiz tomorrow, might not, the man yelled frantically, still struggling to get any answer from the kids until all of them had left, making him give a small sigh. This left the teacher with Naruto, and as he stood there in wait he seemed to be lost in his head. He hadn't expected anything less from his classmates, but he had other things to worry about, which is why he hadn't moved yet. He was thinking on the grade he would get from his teacher, and moving would bring him into the reality that he might not get what he needed, if he was going to get that car. Which was like the rite of passage for most teens. He would need to convince the man he should have the best grade, although his expectations were slowly fading, as he had no reason to believe he would be able to convince the man of anything, especially with how little help he was with the other students. Naruto turned to the teacher, who had been waiting for him for a couple of seconds. Realizing this, the blonde moved to stand in front of him with a sheepish smile. "So, how'd I do?" he questioned confidently, but the boy's face didn't convey the same confidence in his tone. "I'd say, a solid B-," responded the boy's teacher, his voice full of boredom as he waved Naruto off while looking towards a book. The blonde's eyes widened, his mind going rampant before he repeated, "A B-," he said quickly, having tried to process it in his head before saying it out loud. "You were taking too long," the man started, still not looking at Naruto before continuing blankly. "You ran my class into the bell, and now I have to move my quiz to tomorrow." Naruto's eyes would have narrowed if he wasn't surprised. He had expected any other answer, not this. Lowering his grade for taking his time was stupid, and it wasn't fair. How could his teacher do this? And the more he thought on it, the more he had thought there had to be a rule against someone doing that. "Come on, there has to be something I can do," Naruto said frantically, turning quick as he looked to the window and then back to his teacher. "No, I'm sorry, but A B- is A B-." Naruto gave a serious look, hardened and determined, but somehow still frantic. "I wasn't going to resort to this, but," the boy's teacher looked up to him finally, seeing the look he gave in its fullest. "My dad, he is going to get me a car, if I can get 3 A's and $2,000, I have the 2,000, and this is the last grade I need." Even at the boy's words the teacher shook his head, not listening to what he had to say. Naruto's eyes softened with worry, his eyes shifting around, almost wanting to find the answer in the classroom. "Look," the blonde said once more, trying to gain his teacher's attention. "I have a friend," he continued, his words making the man listen just a bit more. "He is my best friend. While sure, a car is a rite of passage for a teen, a dream of freedom for most, but it's not my dream. I promised my best friend I'd make sure he's never late again. That car isn't just for me, it's for him too, so he can actually make it to school." The boy's teacher was now fully looking at Naruto, his story making him intrigued for the first time since the class started. "You want to know why? Because without that car, he will continue to fail. I mean, I can't help him if he is not even here." Once Naruto finished, the man looked deep in his eyes, searching for a lie which could not be found. Naruto wasn't planning on telling anyone about his plans with the car. He didn't like drawing attention to himself. There was even more parts to the story that he didn't want to share without his friend's permission, but the blonde had hoped the little bit he gave up would change the man's mind. Naruto kept his head down as he walked through the crowded hallway. Students were clustered near lockers, their conversations blurring together into a noisy hum. He barely noticed. The weight of the B- hung over him, heavy and final. No car. No way to keep his promise. Lost in thought, Naruto didn't notice the figure moving toward him until he was yanked sideways. His entire body shifted, swung through the air with a rush of wind whipping past his face. His eyes squeezed shut instinctively as he was slammed into the lockers with a loud bang. The pain radiated through his back, sharp and immediate, but the chatter of students around them barely faltered. No one seemed to care. Gritting his teeth, Naruto grabbed at the arms pinning him, his body still dangling off the ground. When he opened his eyes, defiance burned within them, meeting the sneering gaze of his assailant. "Hey, emo boy. Didn't see you there, drawled Trent, captain of the football team. Trent's towering frame loomed over Naruto, his sneer widening as he tightened his grip. Sure, Naruto was taller than most kids, but Trent had the size and strength advantage. Naruto scowled. What do you want, Trent? I don't have time for this. You know, I'd pound you right here if there weren't so many people watching, Trent sneered, slamming Naruto against the lockers again. The loud bang echoed down the hall, but Naruto refused to react, biting back the pain as he glared at the other blonde. Trent's grin faltered slightly. You think you're funny, don't you? Naruto smirked faintly, though his back screamed in protest. Stereotypical jock. I'm guessing you'll peak senior year? Trent growled and slammed him into the lockers again, harder this time. The impact rattled the nearby doors. But still, no one intervened. You know exactly why I'm angry, Witwicky, Trent hissed, his face close to Naruto's. That stunt you pulled in class, let me guess, the spitball? Naruto interrupted, his tone dry. It's not my fault you prank like a child. Trent's sneer twisted into a snarl, and he slammed Naruto again, though his grip wavered. Just stop, Trent said through gritted teeth, or so help me God, not even your dead brother will be able to save you. The words hit like a punch to the gut, and for a moment, everything seemed to freeze. Trent's grip loosened slightly as he realized what he'd said. His own anger flickered, replaced by something like regret, but it was too late. Naruto's eyes darkened. The defiance remained, but now there was something colder behind it. Careful, Trent, he said quietly. You might actually cross a line one day. Trent hesitated, unsure of what to say. The tension hung heavy between them, the noise of the hallway fading into the background. Naruto could have taken all the other insults. The normal call of emo, nerd, and idiot were just some he could think of, even though none of the normal conformities of school roles fit him. But the rage that he felt, when the bastard was speaking about his brother, made his blood boil. It made him feel something he had never felt at all, and that pure rage began to fill him, making him feel something else. Something very dark, that he had to dismiss as soon as it came. The students were now all in their classes, only Trent and Naruto still stood in the hall. Only now the tables had been reversed. Naruto still held Trent's arms, but now the jock had no hold on him. With a sharp movement, Naruto had dropped to the floor, his feet finally grounding him. Trent stumbled back, momentarily shaken, his confidence faltering. Listen, you freak, your brother may be gone, but that doesn't mean you can turn me into a laughing stock, so stay out of my way, before I make you visit him. A smirk came back to Trent's face, his proud smile not being seen by Naruto. Come on, let go, I mean really. With how you're speechless I'd think you were the one that killed your bro, and I'm next. Trent paused, sensing the tremors in the boy who now held him captive. He realized he had slipped again, 2 times in fact. He shouldn't have suggested such a thing of the boy, but before he could say another word, the football star was on the other side of the room. A single palm strike sent Trent crashing into a row of lockers. The sound of the impact rang through the hall, louder than any noise that had come before. Trent winced, his whole body in pain as he could only slowly look up, and when he did, he was met with red eyes. Fox-like eyes stared at the blonde, scaring him to his core. He was frozen, sweat trickled down his neck as he didn't move an inch. They were bright, cold, fox-like, and sharp, and they were the last thing the boy saw, before one final blow knocked him out. Time skip. Naruto sat in a green car, his hand holding up his head as he looked dismissively out of the window. His hair swished and turned, flailing from the wind as the topless car was driving at 25 miles per hour. The whiskered blonde didn't turn to the driver of the vehicle, much rather. Staying in silence after the circumstances of him being picked up, so, a voice started, sounding tired but gruff and rugged as he spoke. I heard you got into a fight, the voice continued. Naruto turned. The silence having been gone as the blonde focused on the sounds of the wind before speaking. "Yeah," the blonde answered, a regretful tone accented by a worried look. "I'm sorry, Dad," Naruto finished, completely turning to the voice once he was done. The man to his left was his adopted father, Ron Witwicky, a big man that had a proud aura around him. Although Naruto couldn't tell why, Naruto stared towards his father, his eyes scanning for disappointment that he wouldn't find. The blonde stretched his mouth to say something but stopped, only to do so again, forcing words out the best that he could. "Are you mad?" he asked suddenly. Ron looked towards Naruto for a few seconds, before putting his eyes back on the road. Giving a quick chuckle before a proud smile quickly arched on his face, Naruto rose an eyebrow, having seen his father smile, but he was unable to ask a question about it, as he tried to figure out what his father was smiling about. Ron gripped the steering wheel a little tighter, his gaze fixed on the road. "I'm not mad at you," he said, but there was a weight in his voice Naruto didn't fully understand. "Your mom is, but I'm definitely not. The principal had told me what happened, the security cameras made it more clear as well. If anything, I'm proud of you. That boy had no business talking about Sam like that." The whiskered boy's eyes softened slightly at what his dad had said. The rushing wind suddenly felt calming, and a smile was plastered on the blonde as he was happy he wasn't in trouble with his dad. But soon Naruto's mind turned to his mother, his smile fading into a frightened look as he thought about what the woman would do. "Wait, Mom is mad at me," the blonde said quickly, showing his full frightened look to the man. Ron chuckled again, a joking bellow stretching from his mouth, before turning to his son slightly. "Yes, she is," the man said, his voice sounding amused as he spoke. "When we get home, she's going to tear into you and me like a pack of wolves," Ron said, chuckling. But there was something softer in his voice, something that told Naruto this wasn't just a joke. Naruto showed another confused look, having read into what the man had said before speaking up. "Wait, what do you mean?" asked Naruto. "I thought she was mad at me. Why would she tear into you two?" Ron shook his head slightly, keeping his smile, but it seemed less happy to the blonde. "Son," the smile quickly strengthened, as the man turned his car to get to another part of the road, leaving the boy without an answer to his question. "Judy's mad I'm still getting you the car," Ron said cheerfully, though a faint strain in his voice betrayed something deeper. Naruto's eyes widened in shock, his jaw dropping slightly as he tried to process the words. He was still getting the car. He had been so certain that the fight and the grade would ruin his chances. But why? Why would Ron risk Judy's wrath just to get him the car? As the shock ebbed, the boy glanced to his father, who now tapped the steering wheel rhythmically, humming along to a tune Naruto couldn't recognize, probably one his father made up on the spot. Still, the question gnawed at him. He thought about letting it go but couldn't. "Why are you doing this?" the blonde asked, his voice steady but probing, his blue eyes searching for the truth in his father's face. Ron's cheerful rhythm slowed, his hands gripping the wheel a little tighter. His eyes stayed on the road, focused and calm, but the easy smile he wore faded. "I'll tell you later," the man said finally, his voice quieter, more serious. Then, with a chuckle that felt almost too practiced, he added, "It's too sappy for a day like this." The smile returned to Ron's face, but Naruto couldn't shake the feeling it wasn't entirely real. He wanted to press further, but when his dad laughed again, the tension seemed to ease. For now, Naruto decided to let it go, though the question lingered in the back of his mind. The two shortly arrived at the dealership, and when Naruto saw the new cars that were placed all around the lot he gave an open smile. New cars lined the parking lot, most leading to the building of the lot: Porsches, Dodges, Mustangs and other cars, all ready and on some sort of sale that the blonde had no idea about. It all seemed too good to be true, and it was, because once the boy looked to his stepfather, the man just gave a mock laugh, one that made the boy quickly realize these weren't the cars he and his dad were going to look at. "You think that's funny?" Naruto asked, his voice sharp, challenging the joke Ron had just pulled. Ron glanced at him, eyebrows raised like he couldn't believe Naruto even had to ask. Yeah, I think it's funny, he shot back without missing a beat, a grin spreading across his face as he tapped the wheel in rhythm with his laughter. Naruto frowned, crossing his arms. You're laughing way too hard for someone who's supposed to be supportive, you know. Ron's chuckle deepened into a full laugh, shaking his shoulders. Oh, come on. You really thought I'd get you a Porsche for your first car? Kid, do I look like a billionaire? The laughter rolled out of him, filling the small car and making Naruto sink lower in his seat, cheeks burning. Well, I didn't know. Naruto muttered, turning toward the window, you're the one who said I was still getting the car. Figured you'd at least get me something cool. Ron smirked, tapping the wheel again. Don't worry, I've got cool covered. Just not Porsche level cool. He stole a glance at Naruto, his grin softening. Trust me, you'll like it. Naruto huffed but couldn't suppress the small grin that tugged at the corner of his mouth. They arrived at the real dealer shortly after, a small shop tucked behind a few scattered cars, far less impressive than the first dealership. As Naruto stepped out of the green car, he immediately noticed the lack of staff. 2 people were standing near the lot, and possibly a third inside the shop, but what struck him harder than the emptiness of the lot was the state of the cars. Every one of them looked worse than the rusted old heap his father had been driving before the accident. None of them were worth even half of the 2,000 he had saved up, let alone the 2,000 his dad was pitching in. Naruto deadpanned at the sight. 2 cars, older than his dad, both of which made him want to turn and leave the lot entirely. Dad, none of these are even good, Naruto said, his tone dripping with frustration. You said half a car, but if I drove any of these, I bet they'd break down not even half a mile out. Ron looked at the cars with a relaxed posture, his arms crossed. A slight smile tugged at the corner of his mouth, almost as if he hadn't heard Naruto's complaint. When I was your age, LD have been happy with 4 wheels and an engine, Ron replied, his voice steady, almost blank, as he gestured to the cars so decrepit that even Naruto had trouble believing they were considered functional. Naruto gave a short sigh, shaking his head. I get it, he said, his voice softening, slightly. But even I wouldn't drive something like that. Ron gave a small nod, his gaze lingering on the vehicles for a moment longer before he motioned for Naruto to follow him to another section of the lot. The next cars they moved to weren't as bad, and they were some that he would actually be okay with driving, although most were still rusted, and some pretty banged up, but still better than the first 2 the father and son looked at. Gentlemen, a voice called out. Naruto could tell it was directed at the 2 of them just by the tone. It was smooth and charming, a welcoming sound as if the person wanted them to be welcomed into their home. Naruto turned, along with Ron, and both were met with a darker man with a small sun hat. His sunflower shirt and cream-colored shorts meant for the heat of the day. As he walked towards the 2 with open arms, Bobby Bolivia, like the country, except without the runs. The man chuckled at the joke he made, but Naruto blinked at the joke, its humor completely going over his head. Bobby then turned to Ron with a friendly smile, it stretched through his whole face, making high seem so bright before he spoke. How can I help you? The man asked, more towards Ron than Naruto, his voice keeping its charm as he turned to the bigger man. With a smile Ron cast his hand out towards Bobby. Well, my son here, looking to buy his first car. Bobby quickly took the hand, a smile arching on his face that seemed similar to Ron's. The man then turned to Naruto, the eyes under his sunglasses showing intrigue, at least that's how it seemed to Naruto. Once he let go of Ron's hand, Bobby moved to Naruto, putting his hand on the boy's shoulder. You come to see me? The older male asked, making Naruto give a smirk. I had to, the blonde quickly responded, testing how the man would respond, wanting to know whether he could joke with him or not. Bobby gave another chuckle at the boy's words. practically beaming before starting to lead Ron and Naruto. That practically makes us family. Uncle Bobby B, baby. Uncle Bobby B, Naruto, the blonde said, giving his name in the same fashion as the man, a subtle grin playing on his lips. Bobby clapped his hands together as if sealing a deal. Naruto. I like it. Got a ring to it. Strong name for a strong young man. Ron raised an eyebrow, a faint smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth as he watched the exchange. Let's hope his car's as strong as his name, Ron quipped, his tone teasing. Naruto rolled his eyes but couldn't help a slight chuckle. Yeah, let's hope, he muttered, glancing back at the rows of cars that still looked like they'd seen better decades. Bobby caught the glance and threw an arm around Naruto's shoulders. Oh, don't you worry about these beauties, kid. They've got character. Personality. Just like you. He gestured broadly toward the lot as if unveiling treasure. Naruto wasn't convinced, his eyes narrowing slightly as he scanned the rusted and battered vehicles. Pretty sure some of these have more rust than paint, he said under his breath, loud enough for Bobby to hear. The older man laughed, undeterred. Hey, a little rust never hurt anyone. It's just seasoning. He winked at Naruto, his energy infectious. Before turning to lead them deeper into the lot, Bobby continued his spiel, cracking jokes and gesturing animatedly as he led Ron around the lot. Naruto trailed close behind at first, laughing softly at the salesman's antics. But soon, something tugged at the edges of his attention. It wasn't loud or obvious, just a faint pull, like a whisper in the back of his mind. His steps slowed, his focus drifting as if led by an unseen force. Neither Ron nor Bobby noticed as he veered off toward a different part of the lot. Naruto stopped in front of a 1977 Chevrolet Camaro. Its battered exterior and patches of rust made it blend in with the other junkers, but something about it stood out. The faded yellow paint, streaked with black racing stripes, still carried a sense of purpose, of strength waiting beneath the surface. His blue eyes widened, taking in every detail as if the car itself was calling to him. He stepped closer, a strange mixture of curiosity and excitement bubbling in his chest. Bobby's words from earlier echoed in his mind. The driver doesn't pick the car picks the driver. Naruto swallowed hard, his hand brushing lightly over the hood. For the first time since stepping onto the lot, he felt like he'd found something that wasn't just a car, it was a connection. The blonde let his hand feel the metal as he walked, his steps slow as he walked to the door. The hot metal felt different, compared to all the other cars. The heat was nowhere near the others. Instead of boiling, it felt warm and inviting, as if this was what was pulling him. Naruto ignored the scruff sounds of the gravel beneath his shoes. His hand hovered over the handle, questioning what he was doing, grabbing it, reassuring himself. He opened the door and slid in. For a moment, he just sat there, hands resting on the wheel. The interior, though worn, felt like it was made just for him. The seat fit perfectly, like it had been waiting for him to come along. Naruto exhaled slowly, the weight of the moment settling over him. He didn't know why, but it felt like the Camaro was waiting for him. Like it had been holding its breath until he stepped inside. Once Bobby and Ron realized Naruto was gone, they found him in the Camaro, hands on the wheel, eyes forward. Taking in every detail of the interior, Bobby raised an eyebrow, crossing his arms as he approached. Something in his posture shifted, a mix of curiosity and unease, like he wasn't sure how to read the situation. Ron, on the other hand, stood back with an approving smile, his arms crossed for an entirely different reason. Naruto recognized that look, pride. I like this one, Naruto said, his voice steady as he ran a hand over the radio's buttons. Can you tell me more about it? Bobby leaned in, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. You know, I don't know a whole lot about this car, he admitted. Then, as if deciding on a new angle, he gestured broadly. But look at it. Sleek body. Custom paint job, real personality, custom? Naruto interrupted, his brow furrowed as he glanced at the faded paint. This thing's so old the paint's practically peeling off. Well, sure, Bobby said, crouching by the window with a bewildered look. But that's custom faded. Adds charm, you know? Naruto stared at him, deadpan. Custom faded. Really? Bobby nodded enthusiastically, as if the car's worn-down state were a selling point. Ron chuckled softly, but Naruto wasn't buying it. He leaned back in the seat, his fingers drumming on the wheel as doubt crept into his mind. Maybe this wasn't the right car after all. Before he could make up his mind, Bobby straightened, clapping his hands as he turned back to Ron. I'll tell you what, you've got a sharp kid here. Good eye for quality. Naruto rolled his eyes, catching the glint of something metallic in the rearview mirror. He froze for a moment, a strange tingle running down his spine. It felt like the car was waiting for him. Listen, if you don't want it, Bobby began, but Naruto cut him off. No, Naruto said firmly, his grip tightening on the wheel. His voice softened as he glanced toward his father and Bobby. I want it. Bobby's smile widened, though something about it still made Naruto uneasy. He clapped his hands together, spinning back toward Ron like a man ready to close a deal. Well, okay then, Bobby said, his tone almost sing-song. 6,000, Ron didn't flinch. His expression remained steady, his arms crossed as he shot back without hesitation. Sorry, promised him 4. Naruto sighed internally, his fingers drumming on the wheel. He'd known this was coming, the haggling, the push and pull. But why did it have to happen so soon? Okay kid, get out the car. Bobby lost his smile. Naruto could tell he didn't like what happened any more than he did, but for a different reason. But come on, you said cars pick their drivers, Naruto said sharply, still not wanting to part with the Camaro, especially after already seeing all the other cars. Well, sometimes the car picks a driver with a broke-ass daddy. Naruto sighed, reluctantly moving his hand off the wheel. As much as he wanted the car, he couldn't push anymore. Bobby's smile was too wide, and his dad was already in full haggling mode. The blonde reached for the door handle, pushing it open to step out, but once he was out, something strange had happened. Suddenly, the radio crackled to life. A low hum filled the cabin before a familiar tune burst through the speakers, a confident, upbeat rock anthem that made Naruto pause. His hand froze mid-motion, resting on the door handle. What the, he muttered, glancing at the dashboard. Hold up, Bobby said, raising a hand toward Naruto. His eyes narrowed as he pointed to the car. Didn't know this thing even had a working radio. Ron raised an eyebrow, his skeptical expression mirroring Naruto's. Does it come with the car, or is that an extra feature? Before Bobby could respond, a loud pop rang out behind them. Everyone turned just in time to see the windshield of a nearby car crack and shatter, falling in pieces onto the hood. Bobby's jaw dropped, his arms flailing as he rushed toward the damaged vehicle. What the hell? He shouted, running his hands over the broken glass. Naruto stepped away from the Camaro, staring at the scene in confusion. That's weird. As if on cue, another crack split the air. A second car's window shattered, the glass exploding outward as if struck by an invisible force. Bobby spun around, his face a mix of panic and disbelief. No way. He yelled, darting from one car to another, inspecting the damage. This lot's cursed or something. I knew I should have stayed home today. Naruto's eyes flicked back to the Camaro. He swore he saw the faintest flicker of its headlights, like a wink. Ron, meanwhile, chuckled under his breath. Well, Bobby, looks like your inventory's thinning out. Good thing this one's still intact. He nodded toward the Camaro, his tone laced with mock sympathy. Bobby spun back around, hands on his hips. Fine, fine. $4,000, and that's my final offer. Take it before this cursed car wrecks my whole lot. Naruto's lips curved into a small grin as he climbed back into the driver's seat. The strange hum of the radio had settled into a calm melody, almost like the car was. Pleased, guess it's meant to be, Ron said, tossing an arm around Bobby's shoulder as he pulled out his wallet. Naruto gripped the wheel again, a spark of excitement in his chest. He didn't know what had just happened, but one thing was clear: this wasn't just any car, it was his car, his first real car. Naruto woke up the morning after arriving home from the dealership, his mind swirling with memories. The car he'd connected to, the drive home, and his mom, Judy, loudly berating both him and his dad for the purchase, all of it was fresh in his head. He stretched lazily, a grin creeping onto his face as he remembered it was the weekend. Weekends meant one thing for the whiskered blonde: pranks. He could already see Trent slipping into a puddle of sticky orange goo, and the image made him snicker as he swung his legs over the edge of the bed. The whiskered blonde shuffled toward the bathroom, yawning as he rubbed the last traces of sleep from his eyes. After splashing water on his face and brushing his teeth, he paused in front of the mirror, eyes narrowing as something caught his attention. His eyes. They seemed brighter today, more vibrant than usual. The blue felt sharper, glowing faintly under the bathroom light. Naruto leaned in closer, tilting his head as if the new angle would reveal some kind of answer. This is new. He muttered, confused. He saw himself in the mirror every morning, and while he wasn't one to focus on details, he was sure his eyes didn't normally look this intense. Shaking the thought off, he stepped back. Maybe I'm still half asleep. But the odd feeling didn't go away. As he returned to his room, his gaze flicked to his desk. His alarm clock sat there, untouched. For weeks, his mornings had been marked by chaos, knocking the clock to the floor, unplugging it in frustration, sometimes outright smashing it. But today, it was fine. The realization made him pause. His routine had been completely disrupted, and it left him feeling off. Almost like something inside him had shifted overnight. Still distracted, Naruto's eyes wandered to his gaming chair, where a small, tan body rested comfortably. He smiled, reaching out to tilt the chair slightly. "Mojo," the boy said softly, his voice warm as he leaned closer. The tiny chihuahua perked up, its stubby tail wagging weakly. Mojo's cast-covered front leg rested awkwardly on the chair, his collar of fake diamonds catching the morning light. Despite his injury, the dog tried its best to smile back, though it didn't move beyond a careful nod of his head. Naruto crouched, gently petting the dog's head. "How's the leg, buddy?" Mojo let out a small yip, which Naruto took as a good sign. Still, the blonde's smile softened as he stood and went to retrieve a bottle of pain pills from the bathroom. When he returned, the blonde knelt by Mojo, offering the pill carefully. The dog hesitated but ultimately took it. Naruto sighed, setting the bottle on his dresser before helping Mojo down from the chair. "Come on, let's get you outside for some air," he said with a grin, leading the chihuahua toward the backyard. Stepping onto the grass, Naruto absently ran a hand through his hair, the nagging feeling from earlier still lingering in the back of his mind. Something about the morning didn't sit right with him. He thought back to the alarm clock again. The untouched clock didn't just feel weird, it felt unnatural. Like his body had instinctively known to stop the destruction before it even began. Naruto paused mid-step, furrowing his brow as an unfamiliar warmth spread through his chest. It wasn't uncomfortable, but it made him acutely aware of himself, of his breathing, his heartbeat, and the faint tingle in his fingertips. His father's voice snapped him out of his thoughts. "Can you not make footprints in my grass?" Ron's tone was a mix of irritation and exasperation. He was on his knees, dressed in a gardening outfit as he tended to the lawn. Naruto glanced down at the tracks he'd left in the dewy grass. Sorry, he said, stepping onto the stone path that led to the fountain. Ron gave an exaggerated sigh but didn't press further, returning to his work. Naruto chuckled, turning his attention to his mom, Judy, who was watching Mojo carefully make his way to the doghouse. Her expression was soft and kind, until she noticed Naruto looking. Her smile vanished, replaced by a scowl. "Mom?" the whiskered boy asked hesitantly, already suspecting what was wrong. Judy ignored him completely, her attention turning back to the yard. Ron, still kneeling on the grass, spoke without looking up. "She's still mad about the car." Naruto blinked, glancing between the two. "Wait, so is she ignoring both of us? Or just me?" "Both of us," Ron answered flatly. Naruto scratched the back of his head, letting out a sigh. He wasn't in the mood to argue with his mom. Instead, his eyes shifted to the Camaro parked in the driveway, a faint smile returning to his face. "Well, I'll see you two later," he said, walking toward the car. "I'm taking Miles to the park. He said there's some kind of party happening." "Let me guess," Ron said, raising an eyebrow. "He's dragging you out of the house again?" "Yeah, something about it being a hot spot for kids from school. Probably wants me to play wingman again." Naruto shrugged, opening the car door. "But hey, he tries his best." Ron nodded knowingly. Naruto climbed into the Camaro, his hand lingering on the wheel for a moment. That same warmth from earlier stirred in his chest again. Stronger this time, as the engine roared to life. Naruto glanced back toward the house, a small grin tugging at his lips. Something's changing, he thought. Guess I'll figure it out later. The boy drove off not 2 seconds after turning the car on, and as he did a plume of smog filled his parents' yard, fanning out quickly like expanding ball, and once some of the smoke cleared, Ron and Judy were left to themselves. "You are so cheap, you know that?" asked Judy, finally speaking to her husband with crossed arms. The man didn't say anything for a few seconds. He then pulled out a weed and turned to her blankly. "It's his first car, it's meant to be that way." Naruto drove himself and Miles towards the park, staying on the right lane with one hand on the wheel. Miles was silent, laid back with a blank look, possibly thinking about something in silence. Naruto, however, was thinking on what exactly they were gonna do at this place, and who was gonna be there. He didn't feel like dealing with the wingman role. His face expressed as much as he blankly looked forward, but he also hoped he wouldn't have to deal with any annoyances while at the park either. He still had to come up with his pranks after all. Some were still unfinished and in his trunk, just in case. Naruto drew out Miles silently, his voice devoid of emotion as he broke the silence. The whiskered boy looked to him quickly, raising an eyebrow before looking back to the road. "What?" Naruto quickly questioned, figuring the boy really did have something on his mind, or at least wasn't okay with how blank and flat his tone was. "Thank you." Naruto glanced at Miles briefly, his fingers stopping their absent tap against the steering wheel. He wasn't the best at reading the room sometimes, but with Miles, he didn't have to try too hard. The silence was heavy, too heavy for a kid like Miles, who always seemed ready to fill the world with noise, and that "quite thank you" from his best friend made him a bit more confused. Naruto blinked, glancing his way again. "For what?" "For, helping me out with this whole car thing," Miles muttered, his voice low. He tried to sound casual, but Naruto could hear the weight in it, the undertone of sadness that didn't match his usual carefree vibe. Miles turned his head slightly, and for a split second, Naruto caught that look, grateful, but almost guilty, like he didn't feel he deserved it. Naruto kept his eyes on the road, his grin softening into something smaller, more genuine. He didn't say anything for a moment, letting the hum of the engine fill the space. Then, he sighed through his nose, breaking the silence in his own way. "You're really bad at this, you know," Naruto said, smirking faintly. Miles furrowed his brows. "At what?" "At taking a favor without acting like it's a charity event." Naruto glanced at him sideways, his voice losing its teasing edge. "You don't need to thank me for stuff like this. We're friends, Miles. That's just how it works." Miles opened his mouth to say something, but Naruto cut him off with a quick shrug, and besides, Naruto added, his grin returning, "I owe you for always dragging me out of the house. I need someone to do that, or else I'd never get my pranks done, so we're even." The attempt to lighten the mood didn't go unnoticed. Miles let out a small chuckle, shaking his head as he stared back out the window. "You're such a dork sometimes, man." "Hey," Naruto shot back, his smile widening. "I ain't no dork, and I'll prank ya if you say that again," he said with a joking tone. Miles didn't respond right away, but Naruto noticed his shoulders relax a little, the sadness in his eyes softening into something else, something closer to relief. "Thanks anyway," Miles muttered again, quieter this time. Naruto didn't push him further. Instead, he reached over and lightly punched Miles' arm, his way of saying, "I got you." The Camaro rolled on, the weight of the earlier moment fading into the steady rhythm of the drive. Miles cracked a joke about needing Naruto to be his wingman at the park again, and Naruto groaned dramatically in response, but beneath all the teasing, there was a silent understanding, one that didn't need words. Naruto and Miles stepped out of the car, instantly feeling the weight of the summer heat bearing down on them. Around the park, heads turned, some curious, some judgmental, others outright annoyed. Neither boy cared. They walked side by side, casual as ever, even as whispers began to ripple through the crowd. The laughter of teens echoed around the park, mingling with the chatter of different cliques. Groups from their school were scattered everywhere, mixing freely under the glaring sun. Beads of sweat shimmered on necks and foreheads as the temperature seemed to climb higher with each passing second. Naruto's eyes darted around the park, his easy grin masking the wheels turning in his head. He wasn't here just to hang out. No, he had plans that involved a variety of carefully stashed tools hidden beneath his jacket. Somehow, the garment stayed flat, unassuming, as if it weren't hiding water balloons filled with paint, contraptions of questionable design, and other prank materials. A few of his targets were already in sight. Trent and his crew lingered near his car, the boy showing off the Hummer like it was the new toy on the block, oblivious to the trouble brewing. The blonde's grin widened slightly. "This is going to be fun, all right," Miles muttered under his breath, breaking Naruto's train of thought. The blonde turned to see his friend fidgeting nervously, eyes fixed on a group of girls standing under the shade of a large tree. The whiskered boy immediately recognized the look on his friend's face. "Don't tell me you dragged me out here for them." He smirked, already knowing the answer. Miles shot him a sheepish glance. "Come on, man. It's a good opportunity. I mean, look at them, they're like straight out of a shampoo commercial or something." Naruto snorted. "Yeah, okay, Romeo. Let's see what you've got." The pair made their way over to the group, Naruto's easy stride contrasting with Miles' slightly stiff movements. The girls, three blondes chatting and laughing among themselves, glanced up as the boys approached. One arched an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed, while another offered a polite smile. "Hey," Miles said, scratching the back of his neck. "Hot day, huh? You guys come here often?" Naruto bit back a laugh, crossing his arms as he leaned casually against the tree. "Really, dude? That's your opener?" He teased under his breath, just loud enough for Miles to hear. His friend shot him a quick glare, his cheeks flushing. "Shut up," he muttered before turning back to the girls. Anyway, I'm Miles, and this is my buddy, Naruto. We were just, wondering if, the blonde tuned him out, letting his friend stumble through the conversation. His focus shifted back to the park, his mind already mapping out the logistics of his pranks. The positioning was perfect, Trent and his crew were close to the fountain. And the wind was blowing just right for the balloons he'd prepared. This day was shaping up better than he'd hoped. Satisfied with his mental blueprint, Naruto straightened and clapped Miles on the shoulder. You got this, buddy. I'm gonna go check something out. Miles turned to him, a mix of panic and gratitude in his eyes. Wait, you're leaving me? You'll be fine, the whiskered boy said, grinning. Remember, confidence is key. Oh, and don't embarrass me. With that, he strolled off, hands in his pockets, his grin widening as he glanced back at the nervous but determined look on Miles' face. Beneath all the teasing, Naruto genuinely wanted him to succeed, and he had a feeling Miles would surprise himself. Now though, it was time to get to work. The blonde's grin turned mischievous as he adjusted his jacket, already imagining Trent's reaction when the first balloon hit. However, his focus faltered the moment he saw her, Michaela. The mischievous grin faded, replaced by a surprised look as Naruto's eyes widened, a faint blush creeping up his cheeks. Michaela, with her jet black hair cascading effortlessly over her shoulders, stood out even in the crowd. Her curves drew attention from everyone, guys, and even some envious glances from other girls. She was effortlessly captivating in a dark, fitted t-shirt and denim shorts, exuding a confidence that left Naruto momentarily speechless. She wasn't just anyone to Naruto. Michaela had been the apple of his eye for as long as he could remember. Even back when Sam was still around, he'd teased Naruto mercilessly about his hopeless crush on her. And yet, she always seemed just out of reach, more of a dream than reality. Naruto's plans screeched to a halt. His mind raced, considering the chaos his prank would unleash. If he went through with it now, Michaela would undoubtedly be caught in the crossfire. That wasn't an option, but that didn't mean he had to give up messing with Trent. He'd just have to adjust. Steeling himself, Naruto made his way toward Trent's group. The jock, as usual, was holding court, still showing off his car to his friends like it was a trophy. Hey, Trent, Naruto called, his tone light and casual as he approached. Heads turned toward him, and Trent's expression soured the moment he spotted the blonde. There was a flicker of anger in his eyes, quickly masked by a forced smile as he stepped away from his car. What are you doing here? Trent asked, his tone dripping with faux politeness as he squared up to Naruto. Naruto didn't miss a beat, mentally rolling his eyes at his fellow blonde. Just thought I'd come over and say hi. You know, since I saw your car and instantly recognized it. Must be yours because of how much it's compensating for your, Laughter erupted from a few nearby teens, only to die down as Trent's forced grin tightened into something more menacing. Don't emo kids hate the sun? Trent shot back, trying to regain control of the situation. Naruto smirked, mentally rolling his eyes at the weak jab. Yeah, but I'm not an emo, you might want to Google that or something. Then again, I guess research isn't your thing, huh? A few more chuckles rippled through the crowd. And Naruto could see Trent's patience wearing thin. It was subtle, but the jock's jaw tightened, his shoulders stiffened, and his eyes darted toward Michaela, who had glanced over at the exchange with mild curiosity. Naruto's smirk widened. Got him. Trent was too easy to bait, and Naruto wasn't about to waste the opportunity. He opened his mouth to deliver another line, but before the words could leave his lips, Miles suddenly appeared at his side, cutting him off. Hey, we gotta go, Miles said, his voice tinged with urgency. His smile was tight, forced, and almost painful to look at. Naruto frowned, glancing between his friend and Trent, who still looked seconds away from blowing a fuse. "Why? What's going on?" he asked, the confusion clear in his tone. Miles's smile wavered even more, nearly turning into a grimace, before snapping back into place as if on autopilot. His eyes flicked nervously behind Naruto. Following his friend's gaze, Naruto turned his head, and immediately spotted the problem. Two of the girls from earlier were walking toward them, their expressions a mix of irritation and disdain. The whiskered blonde's eyes narrowed, his lips twitching in disappointment. "What did you do?" he asked, voice low and exasperated. Miles hesitated, scratching the back of his head as the girls closed the distance. So. I might have gotten one of their numbers," he admitted. His voice a sheepish mumble. "But the two I didn't pick? Yeah, they're not happy about it. And, to be fair, I thought I'd get rejected by all three." Naruto blinked at him, his frustration giving way to a brief flicker of respect. "Huh," he said, eyebrows raised. "Didn't know you had it in you." Miles didn't respond, too busy watching the girls with the expression of someone anticipating a slap, or worse. Naruto sighed, casting one last glance at Trent, who looked ready to explode. Damn. That could have been fun. But Miles came first. He wasn't about to let his friend face this mess alone. With one last mischievous smirk, Naruto clapped a hand on Miles' shoulder and turned back to Trent. "Sorry for the jokes, man," he said, voice light but insincere. "Me and Miles here gotta bounce. But hey, since I caused so much pain, let me pay you for my time." Before Trent could react, Naruto pulled a wad of cash from his pocket and slapped it into the jock's hand. He didn't give him a chance to respond, just spun around and steered Miles away, heading for his Camaro. After laying low for a while, the two friends finally felt safe enough to sit on the hood of the Camaro, staring up at the sky. The tension from earlier had faded, replaced by an easy, comfortable silence. Naruto leaned back on his elbows, shaking his head. "So, are we gonna talk about how you somehow managed to start a love triangle, or should I say war, in under 10 minutes? Miles groaned, covering his face with his hands. "Don't remind me. I wasn't even trying." Naruto chuckled, his earlier disappointment forgotten. "I'm just saying, man, if you're gonna play the field, maybe don't aim for 3 girls at once next time." "Noted," Miles muttered, though a faint grin tugged at his lips. Above them, the sky was a mix of warm colors, the sun starting to dip toward the horizon. It was peaceful. Almost too peaceful. Naruto's grin turned sly. "So, wanna make bets on whether Trent loses it and pops a blood vessel by the end of the day?" Miles snorted. "Nah, I already know not to bet against you. Dude probably already lost it the second you slapped that cash in his hand." The two burst into laughter, their voices carrying into the fading daylight. Naruto then turned back to his friend, holding up an unassuming orange pen that stuck out like a sore thumb. "You wanna know the best part?" Naruto asked, his mischievous smile spreading wide enough to make Miles instantly suspicious. Miles raised an eyebrow, already sensing trouble. "Do I even wanna know?" he asked, though the smirk tugging at his lips showed he was enjoying this more than he'd admit. Naruto didn't answer right away. Instead, he let out a low, almost sinister chuckle, a sound that only deepened Miles' curiosity. The chuckle turned into a laugh before finally cutting off, leaving only the glint of mischief in Naruto's blue eyes. "I rigged the cash with paint bombs," Naruto said, his voice dripping with satisfaction. Miles' jaw dropped, his expression caught somewhere between awe and disbelief. You what?" Naruto's smirk only grew. He pulled a pen from his jacket pocket, twirling it between his fingers like a magician showing off his trick. "One click," he said, holding the pen aloft for dramatic effect. That's all it takes. Without waiting for a response, Naruto clicked the pen. A muffled pop came from the direction of Trent and his crew, followed by a chorus of surprised shouts and curses. Bright orange paint exploded from the stack of cash Naruto had handed over, splattering Trent and his friends in a messy, dripping layer of neon chaos. Miles whipped his head toward the scene, his eyes wide. He stared in stunned silence as Trent furiously tried to wipe paint off his face, only for it to smear even more. His friends weren't faring much better, all of them flailing uselessly as the paint clung to their clothes and skin. Finally, Miles turned back to Naruto, still speechless. The blonde leaned casually against the hood of his car, arms crossed and smirk firmly in place. "Best $40 I've ever spent," he said, his voice carrying a mix of pride and amusement. Miles burst out laughing, the sound loud and unrestrained. "Dude, you're insane." He managed to choke out between laughs. "But that was genius." Naruto shrugged, his grin softening into something more playful. "Hey, they say pranks are the best way to make memories, right?" Miles shook his head, still laughing as he looked back at the chaos Naruto had left behind. "Man, remind me never to borrow money from you." Naruto chuckled, scratching the back of his head sheepishly. "Hey, that's payback for you." "Not my fault he fell for it." "Yeah, but you didn't just follow through, you went overboard." "I mean, come on, blowing up a wad of cash, legendary, but risky." Miles shot him a grin. "You're lucky Principal Keller isn't here at the park." Naruto shrugged with a smirk. "What's life without a little risk?" Miles rolled his eyes, then glanced toward the far side of the park. Michaela walking away from the park, alone and with a quick stride. He nudged Naruto with his elbow. "Speaking of risks, when are you gonna stop chickening out and talk to her?" Naruto blinked, his head whipping toward Miles. "What? Who?" Miles tilted his head toward Michaela, his grin turning smug. "Don't play dumb. Michaela. You've been staring at her for weeks like a lost puppy. You've got the car, you've got charm, well, sort of, what's the holdup?" Naruto groaned, rubbing the back of his neck. "Miles, I'm not chickening out. She's way out of my league, okay? It'd never work." "Out of your league?" Miles scoffed, folding his arms. "Dude, you blew up Trent and his crew with a paint bomb. That alone puts you in a league of your own." Naruto threw him a flat look. "Yeah, because that's exactly what I should lead with. Hey, Michaela, I blew up the football team, you know, she would have been in the crossfire if I hadn't made sure she left beforehand." "Why not?" Miles shrugged, still grinning. "It's better than doing nothing. Come on, Naruto. You're good at pulling off the impossible, don't let this be the one thing you wimp out on." Naruto hesitated, glancing at Michaela again. His car's radio clicked on suddenly, playing a few encouraging notes from Eye of the Tiger. Miles smirked, giving him a shove toward the edge of the hood. "I don't know what's up with your Camaro, but I think even it knows you need to go for it." Naruto's just gave a sigh. "I might need to get that radio fixed if it's randomly playing songs." Miles rolled his eyes, leaning forward with an exaggerated sigh. "You're deflecting again. Just listen, what's the worst that could happen? You've already survived worse. Take the shot, man." Naruto groaned but stayed put, refusing to move. Miles stared at him for a long moment, then shook his head with a disappointed smirk. "Chicken," he teased, hopping down from the hood. "Fine, be that way. But don't come crying to me when you miss your chance. Where are you going?" Naruto asked, an eyebrow raising as he quickly turned to Miles. "Leaving, just in case you do take my advice, the boy waved off the blonde, and walked away, leaving Naruto to look at a fleeting Michaela. That's it for today. I hope you liked the video. Please like and subscribe, and comment ideas if you can, and maybe you could share this with your friends, because you never know, they might like what ifs too. So without further ado, all Kage, out.